If you really want to impress people, you need to show them you're a winner.
The Peanuts Movie.
Charlie Brown, a klutzy boy for whom nothing ever goes right, tries his best to impress the new red-headed girl at his school.
The Good.
If you've got a decent handle on the Peanuts characters as you've seen them in their classic forms, you'll get a very familiar vibe from the way the characters are portrayed in this movie. These characters also have very familiar tropes that people are going to recognize from classic Peanuts cartoons, and those show up, but there is always a good situation that calls for that particular trope to be utilized. And the same goes for the characters Snoopy and Woodstock. Both of these characters are utilized in a pseudo-subplot of this movie to promote anywhere from a mild amount to an extreme amount of very amusing absurdity. And the thing I like most about this movie, apart from the fact that the characters are portrayed so well and so true to their classic counterparts, this movie doesn't feel the need to modernize unnecessarily. You might see that with certain things that feel like to be hip and up with the times. They will set it in the 21st century, they'll have the characters behave a certain way, they'll throw in a new gimmick having to do with the new time period they're set in, but not only does the Peanuts not choose to go for another time period, but the sentiment, the vibe that the movie gives off, feels very much like the classic Peanuts. This is what it means when you take a classic cartoon and imbibe a feature film with its spirit. That being said, there are two things from the classic show that were improved upon with this movie. The first is the animation. Mainly it just gives it a polished, modern-looking animated aesthetic that would allow it to appeal a little more strongly to children of today than it would maybe the animation of several years ago, even if you do have kids who grew up with classic Snoopy cartoons. But despite being CG, it's done so in such a creative combination of a way of CGI and hand-drawn animation that it still does feel very much like the Peanuts should, in terms of animation. And the second thing is the voice acting. Sorry, classic Peanuts cartoons, but while there is something endearing about all these characters and the way they were voiced, back then the voices were just a lot more awkward than Hollywood has the capabilities to do now. Compared to the old cartoons, this movie just simply has more seamless flowing conversations and more on-point emotional reactions from the characters. And that can do nothing but strengthen a movie.
The Iffy.
Though I did say the spirit of the Peanuts, as well as the time period, didn't really modernize, there are instances of modern-day pop music being used in this movie. This is not in and of itself an inherently bad thing. It's just something that, as a personal preference, I could have done without.
The Bad.
Occasionally, when we cut to the subplot featuring Snoopy, I feel like that can have the ability to distract from the main plot a bit, especially at one particular moment in the film where I felt the moment happening in the main story really had some momentum and could go some good places in storytelling, and then we just cut to this other thing.
The Verdict?
I signed up for a Peanuts movie, and I got a Peanuts movie. This is not a reboot, this is not reimagining, this is not let's take it from a different angle. This is the Peanuts, pure and simple, just with a 21st century aesthetic update. But the spirit of the original cartoon is very much present, and it is fantastic. This is Detective Steve, assuring you that the Peanuts movie will not ruin your childhood. However, we do still have that Popeye movie coming up next year.